Success Worldwide, Wendy Longwood.
Thank you, Natalie. Welcome, everyone. We are so excited to have you joining us today. This is going to be a fantastic session. I'm super excited about it. I can tell you that every time we have one of these online workshops, you walk away with at least one, but probably lots of really great kernels of knowledge and things that you can take and move forward here specifically for interviewing skills that you can take forward and make sure to kind of nail that next big interview. I really wanted to just kick off by giving just a huge shout out to the Calvin Klein team. Calvin Klein is one of those really great, really special relationships with Dress for Success Worldwide. And I'll tell you why they're so special. About 4 years ago, the employees of Calvin Klein picked Dress for Success as the organization that they wanted to volunteer their time with and that they wanted to partner with. Out of all the organizations that do amazing stuff, they decided that it was helping women make sure they got great jobs, make sure they advanced in their careers, make sure that they become financially independent, financially stable. And it was that passion and that mission that drove the staff of Calvin Klein to pick us as a partner to work with. And ever since then, they've been working with us hand in hand to deliver these amazing programs with Dress for Success for all of you. So I hope you enjoy today's session. It's really going to be spectacular. And just before I kind of turn it over to the experts and to the real meat of the program, I also just wanted to acknowledge this month is March. Obviously, you all know that. This is Women's History Month. And throughout this month, Dress for Success is doing something different and to really celebrate. We've been through a really rough past year, as all of you know. But this month, we're highlighting as part of Women's History Month, 31 days of women in power. And we're holding up 31 leaders, 31 women who are making a difference in the world of work in the corporate sector to elevate women in their careers and in their career paths. And so I want to encourage all of you to follow us on social media and pay attention to this campaign. And why am I bringing all this up? Because on Wednesday of this month, or on Wednesday of this week, actually, we're going to be celebrating the CEO of Calvin Klein, Cheryl Abel-Hodges, for her role in being a spectacular leader and for leading this company that has done so much for Dress for Success and has such a commitment to supporting women and supporting women in the world of work. So I just wanted to kind of give that shout out to Calvin Klein for being such a great company and great partners to work with. So thank all of you, all the folks I think that might be pinned sort of at the top of the screen, and they're the ones that you're going to be seeing in the breakout sessions. And I just wanted to thank everyone at Calvin Klein for all of your investment putting in this. Natalie does a rock star job on the Dress for Success side. I'm helping to coordinate and harness all the technology and all the content and stuff too. So just thanks to everyone involved in putting this together. And all of you enjoy today. Have a fantastic session. Listen, learn, engage. There's a lot of really great content. It'll be fun. And I know you're going to walk away feeling empowered and feeling confident and just feeling ready to nail the next big interview. So with that, I want to turn it over to yet another great leader at Calvin Klein and turn it over to Marty Solomon, the Senior Vice President of Human Resources. Take it away, Marty.
Thank you so much, Wendy. It is an honor. It is an honor and a privilege to be here today with all of you. And Dress for Success is near and dear to my heart. I've been working with this organization for, I want to say 20 years, 15 years maybe. And every time we have the opportunity to do something like this, I feel I learned so much. It's just a great organization. And as Wendy said, today is about you guys. It's all about you, you. We're here to help you, guide you, give you information, give you insight as it relates to those interviews, how to handle yourself, navigating this crazy world that we're in right now as it relates to all this virtual stuff. If you have to interview online as opposed to the in-person interview, what is that like? How to navigate that, how to follow up, all that good stuff. But I just feel blessed and honored to be here today, and with my amazing team that is going to, they're going to help you with the skills training today. And also I wanted to give a shout out to Hillary, who works in HR, for coordinating this with the Dress for Success people, and thank you. And that's all I have to say. And I'm going to turn it over now to Hillary, and thank you all so much, and really, and have fun, right? Have fun. That's also a really important thing to do in this crazy time we live in. So Hillary, I turn it over to you.
Thank you, Marty and Wendy. Hi, everyone. Thank you for joining today. I'm Hillary Nenner from Calvin Klein HR. It's a pleasure to be here with you all. We hope that you find this workshop on interviewing best practices beneficial. I'm going to run through the agenda. Today, we're going to start off listening to our talent acquisition experts discuss interviewing best practices. Following that, we'll be split into 3 different breakout rooms where you will view role playing of 2 different job interview scenarios, and then have an open discussion of the do's and don'ts about it. We will meet back together in the main room at 2 o'clock for a brief 5-minute stretch break. And then following that, we will resume back on Zoom for a brief presentation about building your brands and what that means. And lastly, we'll end with Q&A, and we will conclude our workshop. So I hope you're excited to be here with us. Please drop a note in the comment section if you're excited too. I want to see those comments coming in. We do encourage you to utilize the chat box. Go ahead, ask questions throughout the session. And right now I'm actually going to, can we see the chat? Can everyone see the chat? Yes, okay. Mm-hmm. Right now I'm going to share my screen, and I'm going to show you, I've got share sound, give me 1 second. All right, I'm going to show you a quick clip, and then I'm going to pass it over to Allison and Jackie, our talent acquisition experts, and we will start the session. So give me 1 second, and I'm sharing our video.
Scandals happen all the time. The question is, how do democracies respond to those scandals?
And what will it mean for the wider region? I think one of your children has just walked in. I mean, shifting sands in the region. Do you think relations with the North may change?
I would be surprised if they do. Pardon me. My apologies.
What's this going to mean for the region?
My apologies. South Korea's policy choices on North Korea have been severely limited in the last 6 months to a year because.
All right.
Thanks, Hillary. So this is Jackie Loikitz, and just kind of moving on. We wanted to kind of start with a quote. Job interviews are like first dates. Good impressions count. Awkwardness can occur, and outcomes are unpredictable. So basically, in a nutshell, what that means is always be prepared, even for the unpredictable. There's so many things we can't anticipate. So just try to think about, different things that could come up. And we're going to talk about preparing for interviews next. So here, how to best prepare for an interview. Obviously, it's research the company. I think as much as you know about the organization, the industry, the company, the job duties, everything relating to the role is super important. If it shows you're prepared and that you care, so that's obviously an important component. Review your resume so that, anything that you've outlined there, you're prepared to talk about. You can kind of add color where it's most relevant. Prepare your STAR responses, which we'll talk about a little bit later in this presentation. Prepare questions for the interviewer. it's never good to assume you know everything, as much research as you've done. So make sure that there are some questions that you have that you can cover during the interview. And of course, prepare yourself. Just, you know, kind of be ready in terms of whatever format you're interviewing in, whether it's virtual or in person, and make sure that, you know, you've prepared yourself as well. In terms of a typical behavioral interview, there are a few different components that take up different amounts of time. So obviously you're going to go into the interview and the first couple of minutes are going to be an introduction and greeting. After the pleasantries are out of the way, the employer will start with questioning, and generally that's about 15 to 20 minutes, where, you know, questions will be posed to you. You'll have the opportunity to answer. I would say, you know, definitely take your time. I think, you know, try to avoid answering too quickly. You know, allow yourself a minute, or maybe not a full minute, but some time to process the question, and respond in the best way you can. The next 5 minutes, you'll have the opportunity to ask some questions, which I touched on in the last slide. So be prepared with those. Just have a couple that are, you know, relevant to the role, the company, maybe things that didn't come up in your research that you're wondering about. And then the last 3 minutes will be the closing, kind of a little bit of a wrap up. In terms of the introduction and greeting, first impressions count. Appearance is important, so just make sure that you're put together and you're presenting yourself in the best way possible. That'll also make you feel good, give you some confidence. Good eye contact in person or virtually is really important. Making sure that you're staying connected to that person. Professional composure. So, you know, I think a job interview can be emotional, right? Certainly if you want the job and you're excited about the role, but try to keep yourself composed and calm. You'll introduce yourself, make sure that you're speaking slowly, you have clear pronunciation of your name, and you can make a little small talk. You know, obviously nothing very personal, but small talk around, you know, your trip there, the weather, just kind of general pleasantries. And then in terms of behavioral-based interviewing, the reason for this is because previous behavior predicts future behavior. So the interviewer is going to use questioning to kind of suss out what your previous roles and your behavior in those roles has been. That way they can get a sense of how you would behave in the current position and how that work would go. Recruiters always ask for examples that demonstrate your level of skill with a behavior that is important to the firm. So every company has, you know, different sets of behaviors that are particularly relevant to their organization, and the line of questioning will be, you know, will go along with that. To answer behavioral questions, you're going to use the STAR method, and STAR stands for situation, task, actions, and results. I'm going to leave it to Allison, my colleague here now, to pick up and kind of take a deeper dive into that. So Allison, you can take it away.
Hi, everyone. I'm Allison. It's great to be here today. And to continue with that, as Jackie mentioned, the STAR method is really important to, you know, in an interview. It does provide kind of an outline for your answers and allows you to be more descriptive. Interviewers will typically ask kind of open-ended questions so that you can give real examples and really give insight to the fact that you do have experience for what they're looking for, can give real life situations that really make them feel confident that you know what you're speaking about. For example, situation, this is really, you know, the example that you can give that ties back to that relates to the question they're asking. The task is really what were you working on, giving you an example of, you know, the reason for the task. Actions, what specific actions did you take to complete the task, you know, how you were moving to the end result. And the result, the outcome. Of course, you want to choose an outcome that was a successful outcome and experience. And so those are just a good way to outline your thoughtful answers. So an example of a question would be, give me an example of your ability to be analytical. This is what the interviewer would ask, and the candidate would answer, I'm good at Excel and have created several spreadsheets to improve processes. This really is missing some pieces of the STAR method. It's really not describing the situation at hand and giving a real, picture of what the reason was that you were working on this. You really want to make sure that you're describing, again, the purpose of the task. The actions are missing in this example. It's really not explaining, the data that you were looking at. It's not, answering what analytical skills you were using. So you really want to make sure that you are kind of completing those steps with the STAR method. And the results are kind of vague. You're not answering, what the processes were that you were improving, why the reason for the spreadsheet. So you just want to make sure that you're answering the question and listening carefully. For example, you want to more so create, give an example of what the data was that you were looking at, what actions, again, in Excel you were doing. Maybe you're doing VLOOKUPs or, creating tables or looking at sales numbers. And you want to tie that into, how did that improve processes? So just giving those real situational examples. Next slide, please. Other common questions, of course, will be, the interviewer will ask you to tell them about yourself, walk it through the resume. You want to really highlight, key accomplishments, highlighting talking sort of in chronological order, making sure you highlight any achievements that really relate to the job you're interviewing for. If it's a manager role or a role that you might be leading others, you might ask, tell me about a time when you had an opportunity to lead others. Again, giving real examples in your answers. When they ask, what are your strengths and weaknesses? It's really great to accentuate, of course, the positives, what you really bring to the company, to the role. Maybe your strengths could be, you have strong with numbers and working in Excel, being team oriented and really have strong organization or follow-up skills, those types of things. And then weaknesses you can really phrase as, I have an opportunity to work on my technical skills with Excel, or I have an opportunity to learn more about, the wholesale business, for example. So it's a way to phrase it so it doesn't sound like you're negative, so you're harping on yourself. And then what achievement are you most proud of? It's great to really have this in your mind and be able to answer this. I think in any interview, you really do want to, again, accentuate your achievements, say what you're proud of, and really having real examples and things to speak to in this question is really important. And then why do you want to work for the company? You really do want to make sure you're showing you've done the research on the company, you've done the research on the position. What about the company stands out to you? Maybe it could be the values the company has as it relates to, sustainability and environmental practices, or the benefits that it offers. Things like that are great examples of answers. And sometimes in interviews, you're asked a question that can stump you. And so if you're not prepared and don't have an answer in your head, it's great to just take a minute, be thoughtful, let them know that it's a great question. You haven't been asked that one before. So maybe taking some time to really be thoughtful of your answers is more important than speeding through it with an answer that's not really achieving the goal. And you can always ask them to repeat the question if you don't understand, or you can repeat the question to them to make sure that you are understanding it correctly. And, if you need to follow up later with an answer or something, that's, I think, more than okay, just making sure that you actually do follow up and, give them that courtesy to get back to them if it's something that you want to follow up on. Next slide. Thank you. And then, yes, of course, closing the interview is always important. Of course, thanking them for their time and the opportunity to be considered. I think it's also a great question that I like at the end of an interview from the candidate is, is there anything about my skills or experience that I haven't touched on that, you're looking for in a candidate for this role. That one I really appreciate because it shows that you want to make sure that you've given them enough information to be able to make a decision about you. And also, if there's anything missing that you can, elaborate further on that might be helpful in their decisions process. And yes, of course, appreciating the time with them, following up with a thank you note and an email after the interview, making sure, it's great to tailor it to the real conversation. So if there's something that stood out in the conversation about the company or something that they told you about the specifics of the role day to day, you want to, follow up with a thank you note that really shows how you are, giving an example of your experience and why you are the best candidate for the job, why you are interested in that role based on the conversation and information you received. So really making it more personal, that shows that you were engaged and really listening. And of course, the 4 Ps are always important. Preparing for the STAR method, as we mentioned, some of those real examples, the actions you took again, and the results, giving real examples are always helpful. And then preparing questions, so making sure you have thoughtful questions for them as well, making sure, asking about the day-to-day responsibilities or key partners you might work with, key technical skills that are required for the role that might not be on the job description, things like that. So really preparing questions, practicing, communication. We all can practice, I think, more and more about communication and how to, we engage in these types of meetings. So just, this practice always builds confidence. And again, putting together that thank you note to send after the interview. And it's great to send that, I think within like 24 hours is kind of a best practice in that respect. Next slide. And this, we are going to send out this presentation as well as an example resume template. So you can see that later, but just some of the key, tips of resume building would be targeting your resume to tailor the role that you're interviewing for. I think sometimes we don't want to get carried away with 10 different resumes, but, a few different types, depending on if you're looking for a customer service role or more of a, computer support role or something that's really more, a version of a resume that's a little bit more specific to that role will stand out to show that it, relates. So that's always helpful to have a few different versions. And let's see, what are a few highlighting relevant strengths, of course, using the right resume keywords. You don't want to, use abbreviations or things that aren't really going to show up in a recruiter or hiring manager's search online. You want to use common words that tie into the job description. And let's see, keeping the format simple, font simple, clean, easy to read. I think depending on how many years of experience, no more than 1 to 2 max pages is really, I think, a best practice in that sense. Here's some example powerful words you can use. You do want to, again, customize resume for each job, use proper format. See, including accomplishments and awards, any sort of additional volunteer or, different events or trainings or certifications is also helpful to include. Making sure that you proofread, this is super important. Maybe getting a second eye is also really helpful. We all overlook our own mistakes sometimes. So having someone else read through that is really key. And then some of the don'ts, just again, keep it simple. Don't include too much personal information, keep it professional. Don't lie, make sure that your resume does match it, maybe your LinkedIn profile, which is another important aspect of kind of marketing yourself out there online, but making sure that it's all honest, in order. It's great to start with the most recent role and then work down to the previous experiences you have. And again, we'll send this back out to you. And next slide. Oh, other way. Oh, I didn't realize, thank you. And then here's another just document on interviewing skills, do's and don'ts. Some of this we certainly covered. Dressing professionally. I know that also virtual interviewing can be different, than in person. So making sure that, as we noticed in that video clip in the beginning, it's, you have to be in a quiet, place where you're not going to have distractions. Making sure your background isn't noisy and chaotic looking, making sure that you do keep eye contact. and are, prepared with everything that you need really, in your seating area. And, of course, major don'ts, don't be late, be punctual. I think, real experiences can show an example of what's to come. So if you're late, for an interview, then that might indicate you're certainly not going to be on time for your job. So always, be on time. Let's see what else. Yeah, we'll send this out, but any obvious, don't chew gum, don't have, a lot of distraction happening. And I think that wraps it up, yeah, for this section. And again, we'll send out the resume template example as well as the presentation, so you have all these details. Thank you. I think, Hillary, we go out to the breakout sessions next.
We are, thank you. Now, actually, there should be a pop-up which will lead us into the 3 breakout rooms. So wherever it pops up on your screen, you'll join that breakout session, and we'll spend some time going through the mock interviews there, and also an open forum in that breakout session. So that should pop up momentarily. And press join.
Please accept the invitation to your breakout room. Thank you. Excellent. If you're not seeing your invitation, just let me know, but all breakout rooms are open. Hey, Janet, are you able to join your breakout room? Jamara, are you able to join your breakout room? You should have an invitation to join breakout room 3. There we go.
I was like,
Awesome. I think we are all coming back into the room. Just waiting for a few more folks. Welcome back. Look, you're fully transformed.
Yes.
Amazing. Well, yes, welcome back to the main room. I'm going to spotlight Hillary for everyone.
How do I get back to the main room?
Oh, you should be here if you're hearing me. Are you?
It's still saying save drive-in mode where it says done speaking. That's the screen that I'm still on.
Okay, hold on for me and I will take care of you, but I am going to go ahead and turn this back over to Hillary. Do you need me to start sharing at this point, Hillary?
Yes, that would be great. Thank you.
Okay, very good. So we're going to get into slideshow mode and we will start the presentation right here.
All right, great. Well, welcome back, everyone. We will talk about the breakout sessions after this. So this session is going to be a lot of self-reflection. It's about building your brand, your personal brand, and we're going to talk about what that means. So what is personal branding? So it's a unique combination of skills and experience that make you who you are. It's how you present yourself in the world. So personal branding is about all of who you are, what you want to be known for. It's about creating a distinctive, role of yourself, creating a message, and being able to promote the brand called you. Next slide. So what are some ways that you can build your brand? So we're going to talk about a personal mission, Personal mission is a brief description of what you want to focus on, what you want to accomplish, and what you want to become. So basically, part of that is also creating your personal brand statement, and that's a concise way of letting others know what you do and why you do it differently. It's expressing in a very compelling way what you have to offer to the world. Although typically a mission statement focuses on a personal goal and brand statement focuses on professional ones, they are actually used interchangeably. So in order to help with building a statement, it's important to think about your brand mantra. And the brand mantra is something that maybe says something about yourself in a short sentence. So you wake up in the morning and it's words that you live by, it's words that you believe in, and it's condensed. It's basically condensed personal branding statement or mission statement. It's important to be truthful when you're thinking about what those statements are, because you need it to be unique to you, personal to you. You have to believe in it, and it's what you embody. So what helps build your brand? So there are key considerations. The core values reflect what's truly important to you. They're not values that change from time to time or from situation to situation, but they're the underpinnings of you. They guide you through your decisions, your attitudes, your behavior. And some examples are integrity, authenticity, innovation, humor, family, competency, generosity, independence. Moving on to another key consideration of goals, it provides focus on what you want to achieve, whether in the long run or the short term, and whether in your personal life or your professional life. There's also an emotional appeal to it. So it's something that's compelling and makes people take note. Maybe it's their passion that they see shine through from you. You also want to build on your strengths. So that your brand should be around what you're most strong in. And so that could include, let's say, coaching or problem solving or presenting, or maybe you ask very insightful questions that get the room moving. And you want to make sure that your behaviors and your actions align with all your values, all your goals, and your strengths, because your truth occurs when no one's watching in the room. So basically, picture having the crowd observe you alone. That's who you should. That's who you are. That's the truth in your brand. So keep that in mind. So let's reflect for a second. Take a second, close your eyes. Think about somebody that you look up to, and what are their characteristics or behaviors? What does this person possess? What do they demonstrate that makes them admirable and unique? So think about that for a second. And I'd like for you to think about and add in the chat what resonates with you when you think of this person, okay? So I'd like for you to put in the chat, I'd like to see the comments flowing of someone that you think about and what is it that makes them admirable and unique to you. So I'll give you a second to think about it. What are some characteristics, some behaviors that this person demonstrates?
Down in the dark screen.
There we go. There we go. I see some. Keep going. Okay, good. Oh, that's nice. Resilient, problem solving. Great. Keep on thinking. This is a time to really self-reflect. We want you to be able to take away from this training afterwards to help build your brand. So it's about creating your statement and making sure that your behaviors are aligned to that. So let's talk about some sample statements. Thank you for adding in the comments. So some examples of sample statements, there's the branding statement, which I use candor, authenticity, compassion, and straight talk to get others to recognize their worth and strive to do their best. The brand mantra, I influence others to do their best. So in this example, the mission statement here can be supported on a personal level and also a professional level. So from a personal level, you would think about being kind and supportive to those less fortunate, could be questioning and pushing back on social causes. From a professional standpoint, it may include being able to see other points of view working as part of the team. Okay. So in terms of building your statement, consider the following. The 5 words that best describe how I see myself are, the 5 words that best describe how others see or describe me. My greatest strengths are, my core values, the values that guide my decisions and behaviors are, and then my personal and professional goals, long and short term are. So you want to think about this after the training, take it home with you, really think about it today, tomorrow, next week, and this will help building your brand statement. In terms of crafting your statement further along, again, it's about self-reflection. So devise a personal branding statement, a brand mantra that reflects your values, your goals, your uniqueness, and talents. Consider how your behaviors and actions will support your brand. Share with others to increase accountability. So it's live by what your mantra is and embody it. And lastly, living by your brand. So some final thoughts to think about. Remember, it's what you want to be known for. Be clear about. Look at it as reputation management. Be clear on your personal strengths, what your talents, your values are, your core areas of expertise. Its ability to clearly articulate that uniqueness. And remember, it revolves around how you present yourself. So how you want others to see you. So be authentic and be you. Thank you. So let's talk about this for a second. So who's going to walk away from this and start working on establishing their brand? Please put it in the chat. Who's already thinking about, wow, what can I do differently? How can I highlight my strengths? Who's thinking about that? Great. Nice. So we want to spend some time talking about, oh, I see some more coming in. Excellent. The wheels are turning. Nice. Keep them turning. Very good. We wanted to circle back to the breakout rooms. How did you find the breakout rooms? Were they insightful for you? Let's see. You can chime in if you'd like to. What are some areas that you found that you could put to good use? If anyone wants to take themselves off mute too, go ahead, or you can put it in the chat. Not enough time, okay.
I have a random comment. Hi, everybody from Boston. There was a time in the role play, the first role play that was supposed to be the worst one. So I didn't even think she did that bad. That was a sad part. But and I'm assuming one of the negatives was she said something like, I want to be a manager in 6 months. Is that something I could, you know? And I'm wondering your opinion on it, because for me, I was like, oh, it's kind of ambitious. Like, at least it shows she wants to grow in the company, but I'm assuming that in the role play, that was a negative. So just wondering your take on that.
Someone in TA want to speak to
Yeah.
that?
Yeah. Oh,
This is Jackie. I'd be happy to answer. Oh, sorry, Allison. But I think if you saw how the question was answered in the second role play, she still expressed interest in being a manager one day, but it was she wasn't dismissing the current opportunity, which I think is the important part. Because you want to make sure that the interviewer feels like you want that job. And ambition is amazing. Like, I definitely want people who are like, when I'm interviewing someone, I'm looking for someone who's interested in taking the next step. But if they're interviewing for that role, it should be with the knowledge that they still have development opportunity, and this is something that they're working towards. So I think just, the way that it was handled in the second script was a bit more thoughtful about how to get there and how to get to that next level, if that makes sense.
Any other comments?
Yeah, I think just to add to that, it is just really important to make sure that you understand you're interviewing for that specific role. So the fact that it was a bit negative or not, portrayed as the right answer in the first script is, they're interviewing for an assistant role, whereas that person really wanted a management role. So ultimately it will just show that they're not the right fit for the assistant role. So, I think keeping in mind, showing ambition that you want to develop and learn and grow, but certainly will be comfortable in a role for at least a year is always really important.
And the candidate also said they wanted to make more money and they were good at bossing people around. So those also are.
Yeah.
No.
So what else did you find? What other areas did you find that you can enhance on your end as far as interviewing goes? Anybody?
Someone dropped in the chat the observation or the challenge of possibly talking over the interviewer. That's that's interesting. Is there anything else the team might want to add to that?
Yeah, I definitely appreciate, enthusiasm or excitement about a role when you're interviewing. When you're being interviewed, you want to express, your interest, but more so, you really want to show that you're listening well, you're engaged in the conversation. It's definitely great to show enthusiasm, but not interrupt. I think that's a key takeaway.
And in almost any work situation, listening skills are important, but in this example specifically, you have someone who'll be working in a store, who will be working among a lot of coworkers, working with customers, new customers coming in, and it's important for all of those people to feel that they're being listened to. I think we've all had the experience of speaking to someone and you can just tell the person has that far away look in their eyes and they're just thinking about what they're going to say, instead of just listening and taking in what you're saying to them. And I think it's a really good quality to work on just across the board in life, but especially in interviews. You want to make sure that the person who is speaking with you has a good sense of your ability to listen and absorb information that they're being given before giving a thoughtful response.
Great. Thank you for the chat. Appreciate all your comments. We also plan to.
Leah, did you? Sorry, Leah,
go ahead.
Did you have a question?
Yeah, thank you. I didn't want to interrupt. Thank you, Allison. Thank you, Hillary. I was in Jonah and Mark's breakout group, and the subject of rapport came up, and I wanted to ask the team, what would you do if you had an interviewer that was not, they were just kind of boning down on not making eye contact and saying, okay, thank you for coming to the interview. I have a question, and not even having the rapport built where you can make eye contact and have a moment of small chat, small talk. I wanted to know what would be a workaround for that, or what you would suggest when maybe their interviewing skills, I don't want to speak to that, but how to try to break that wall, because we already have a wall with the Zoom. And so that's my question. Thanks.
I mean, I think I would say that I would go back to what I said in the chat, which is that, you're also interviewing them. And that if you're meeting someone and they seem like they're not engaged and they don't seem like someone that you would want to, work with, then, I think that's something for you to consider as well. I would also say that interviewing is hard and not everybody's good at it. And, we're really lucky that, we have people like Allison and Jackie and Colby who are really good at it. And most of our managers, fortunately, are really good at it, but some just aren't. And so I think it's something that you have to think about and sort of put into the algorithm that helps you decide whether this is someplace that you want to work. But it's, I think it should send you away with something to think about.
I'd also add, there are some interviews or companies out there that take a very objective approach to interview process, right? So it's all about just asking the questions. I've been over the years in some interviews, and it's just all they want to know is the answers to the questions, and that's it. So it's not that they're not personable; they wouldn't like to be personable. It's just that as their process is such, they're just getting the data and the information back. So I guess my point there is try not to take it too personally. You can certainly try to approach that and be personable by all means and build a relationship or rapport, but sometimes the interview is just the interview and they just want the facts. So you have to kind of go with it in the moment. Does that make sense?
Does anybody else have any comments or questions that we can answer for you?
I think just to add to that, that's when kind of body language also is very important, because if you don't have the opportunity to really be personal and get into, just side talk and kind of get that comfortability, being smiling, making eye contact, the body language is just important to show, how engaged and professional you can be in that sense too.
Just hold out. One particular company that I'm citing is Amazon in particular. They're just very matter of fact with respect to their interview process. So some companies do take that approach.
Would you say that, Mark, with that comment, that could be a indication of the culture of the company, or would you say it's potentially two separate things?
I think initially it's more of just a screening process initially, just to kind of get through the fundamental questions, and then maybe perhaps further on in the process, once they get through that kind of screening exercise, then they'll get to a place maybe of being a bit more of a personable exchange. But that tends to be the process, particularly if there's so many applicants and so many people that are applying for this. They just have to kind of screen and then get to the select few.
We have a great question here in the chat room. Can you address explaining gaps in employment history? Anybody want to?
Yeah,
I can start. Oh, go ahead, Allison.
I can start with my version of the answer. I think it's important to be honest and be not don't hide anything. I think if there's there's always reasons. There's real life that happens for all of us. So if there's a gap because there was either a company layoff or a restructure and your role was eliminated, of course that's all acceptable and understandable. If there is a gap because you decided to have children, or you decided to do volunteer work instead, or you were traveling, or you had a family matter, personal situation that was going on, it's great to share that. without going into too much of your story on a personal level. I think, if you have a family member who's ill and you were off for 6 months taking care of them, that's all you really need to say. You don't have to go into great detail and really spark too much emotions from the person, but just really being honest, I think, and open about that. I mean, real life does happen. I think if it's you don't want to try to hide it at all, because there's always a chance that some people can do employment history verification and things like that. So just being honest is key too.
Can I just add or ask a question on that subject? So I'm in retail, and there's been situations where the company restructured multiple times, like different companies restructured. How has it looked upon as someone who's been through that situation multiple times, being laid off due to a restructure?
It happens, and we understand that. And I know, I realize that the more frequently it happens to you, you could think, oh, this doesn't necessarily look good. But I mean, we meet people every day, all the time. And unfortunately, in many different industries, this is just the reality of the world. So I think if your company decided to restructure, and that's the explanation, then it is what it is. It is not a reflection on you. And I wouldn't assume that an interviewer, a hiring manager, or a recruiter is making any assumptions about that. Just be honest, just be straightforward about what happened, and hopefully the rest of your experience, both at those companies and other companies, will speak for itself.
Thank you.
Another question. Oh, sorry, go ahead.
Would it be appropriate to say that you've had a series of deaths in your family? I mean, this is life, right? Or would that be the kiss of death in a job interview?
I mean, for me, I would just say, I would keep it more general and say I had a series of, very painful life events that occurred, that I had to deal with, and, was unable to work during this period of time. I would, always, if there's like a personal impact or a personal reason for those gaps, I would try to keep it more general, because to be honest, the interviewer really doesn't have any purpose in prying. I think if you can just say, there were extenuating circumstances in my personal life that, I needed to work through, and I was unable to, take a position, or just something more general, because I think, you don't really need, you don't owe the interviewer those personal details. I think you can just say, there are personal matters that, prevented me from work. Those are not issues today. I'm fully available. Don't foresee anything in the near future. These were things that came up that, unexpectedly, but that I had to manage through. But that's my point of view.
Thank you.
Another
Good
question,
afternoon, everybody.
Oh,
I'm sorry.
Go ahead.
My question, and I'm sorry for being late. As I say, I was supposed to be in 3 different places today at the same hour. My question has to do with being wordy. Even I'm trying to figure out right now how to just ask the question and be quiet. I've been doing mock interviews for a month, and I'm getting the same feedback. You're great, but you don't know when to stop talking. Please help me.
Oh, rehearsal can be so helpful. I'm not sure how much you've rehearsed what you're going to say before you would have these mock interviews, but as someone who tends to go on and on myself, I can tell you that for me, it can be really helpful to think, how can I be more succinct with my response, and then to actually do it. Write a script for yourself, you can anticipate the types of questions that will be asked. You have a predetermined response to what the question is going to be. And just remind yourself that regardless of the look on the person's face, when you're finished with what you were saying, you are going to stop talking because you don't know what the interviewer is next going to say or ask you. And wait and see, because you may be surprised what he or she says to you in return. They could take you in into a whole different direction, and you wouldn't even need to expand on what you were saying. And maybe you will, but wait to be invited to expand on it before you just assume that you need to. And I know it can also be really difficult to let a space just be without filling it with sound, with words. And you think, well, if this person isn't going to say something, I'm going to say something. Sometimes they're doing it deliberately. They're trying to figure out who you are. You just stick to your plan, decide what you're going to say. You're going to limit it to these 2 or 3 sentences, and then just listen to what comes next and respond to that.
Thank you.
That's great.
I think just to add to that, the mindfulness is the most important part, because to Colby's point, I actually have a tendency to jump in, occasionally interrupt, and I have to remind myself, as excited as I am to share, my feedback, my point of view, my input, I have to let others finish their thought first. And honestly, like for me as a development opportunity, I have to, in any meeting, think about it and remember, like, okay, you're excited to share this. Wait until this person is done. So it's really just like that constant reminder, so that when you're asked a question, you can think for a beat, think about the responses you've prepared, and make sure that what you respond with is concise and to the point. But it may be you just need to pause for a second, think about it, and then respond.
Another great question in the chat. Can you advise how to explain leaving one company for the same job at a different company? I left for money, but I don't think that's appropriate to say.
Honesty is the best policy. I mean, if your reason for leaving the company is you felt that after a period of time you were no longer being paid at the appropriate level, and you felt that you had exhausted the experience that you were currently in, and that's why you were open to other companies, and this opportunity came about where you're very qualified for the job and they're going to pay you more than you're currently earning, which you've been unsatisfied with, that's a legitimate reason for leaving. I don't think that you have to leave a company only because you're being given a promotional opportunity. I think that's perfectly fine. I don't think that there's nothing wrong with feeling that you deserve to earn a certain amount of money. And I, as a recruiter, would not be concerned that this is someone who only makes moves related to money. Now, if you did it literally in every single job that you've had, that's a different story. But if you've had an experience where that happened, that's totally fine. I would not assume that you're just going to leave in 6 months when someone offers you more money, unless there's something else outside of that that gives me that impression.
I have a question in terms of interview space virtually. I look at all y'all backgrounds, and it's very neutral. I don't have the luxury of that. I live in a very small apartment, so I don't have a clear background. And this is usually my background. Is that a bad background? Unfortunately, I would be in front of my door. But then I wouldn't be comfortable during an interview.
I think your background, I mean, just from my perspective, is totally fine. I mean, the situation that we're all in now, I mean, I'm sitting here in my bedroom because my husband is taking over our office. So you see like my dresser and, you know, I think what you're working with the pictures in the background is perfectly appropriate. I think things that maybe not are as appropriate are, you know, I heard a story once that actually someone I know quite well, was on a call and it was, you know, meant to be more of a formal interview. And she was actually sitting in her bed with her pajamas on. And I think, you know, that is not obviously a professional way to present yourself. But where you're sitting, it's a clear picture. I would just consider lighting. I mean, your backdrop, I think it's nice to see things in the background. I think you're fine. It's been quiet. You haven't had any interruptions. But if anyone else wants to weigh in, but I think it looks great.
Yeah, I do too. And I'll just say that if I turn my camera 180 degrees, you'd see a whole other picture. So a lot of it is just smoke and mirrors. You know, you really only the only part of your home that you need to sort of customize is, you know, just this little space. And, you know, so you can put a piece of whiteboard or something behind you or something like that. But I think for you specifically, I think your background is fine.
Okay.
I think, I mean, yeah, I mean, this is the world we live in right now, right?
It's a great question. Thank you for asking that.
I have a question about, like, if you're working in a remote position, is it advisable to turn on your camera most of the time? Like, most of the people that have been with the company have their camera on. Would you suggest you should turn on that camera most days, or can you just communicate like how I am now, verbally more through the microphone? I know in an interview you would probably want to show your face, right? Even if the interviewer isn't, sometimes the interviewer might not show their face, you know. That's what kind of a question on.
Allison, did you want to take that?
Sure, I can add my thoughts. I would say, you know, a camera is nice if it's one-on-one, or you give the person, you know, a heads up in advance, like I'm not going to be able to, you know, have my video working. I don't want you to feel like, you know, you're the only one on video. So just giving them a heads up in advance if it's not a possibility. If you know that you might have distractions in the background or noise, or you're not in a place that is, you know, able to be more professional or simple in the background, then, you know, giving them a heads up just so it's not an awkward kind of meeting. If it's a group of you and you're attending a meeting, maybe not doing a lot of talking, I think it's acceptable not to have a video. You know, sometimes it's nice to just show face and just, you know, show that you're there, especially if you have a lot of speaking parts in the meeting. But again, you do need to be prepared. It's more important, I think, to you know, not have your pajamas on and not have your kids running around in the background and, you know, lighting and no distractions. But yeah, I think it's perfectly fine not to have that video if you're not, you know, a major speaking part of the meeting. My thoughts.
So we are going to wrap up, but we have room for one more question if anybody has a last question to ask.
I have a quick question. If somebody else has one, I'll make it brief. I want to know how the current climate has affected what you do as recruiters, and how can I be a better subject?
Good question.
Very good question.
That is a good question. I think it's a learning experience for all of us right now, having interviews in this virtual format, just like the last question about, you know, etiquette surrounding whether or not to be on camera or not. Depending on who you ask, you'll find different answers. I'm sure some people think it's totally fine, and others would be not happy to have someone who's not on camera when they are. I think it's a challenge because when you meet with someone in person and you get more of an essence of who they are three-dimensionally, it can be easier to be easier to come away from that meeting feeling like you really know them And for me personally, it's harder for me to get a strong sense of somebody when I'm only meeting them through a screen. But that's just the reality of how it is these days. And it's that way for a very many people. So in terms of what you can do to make things better, I think all of the advice that has been offered previously in this presentation can be very helpful. You know, you want to make sure that you have a somewhat neutral background. You want to present yourself well, keeping in mind that, you know, it's funny, we're only seeing this now. When you're in person, someone's not always looking at just this, right? It's like they're taking you all in, and it's really hard because everything's now fixated on me. Like everyone's probably looking at me now in a way that they wouldn't be if we were in person. You would just, you know, you'd be kind of looking at at other places. So you just want to make sure that what you're presenting and the way that you're presenting yourself, I always go back to rehearsal. I think rehearsing is great. You want to think about what are the different types of characteristics my interviewer could have, and I need to be prepared for whatever I get and to not take it all personally. And just to do everything you can to feel confident in the skills that you're presenting. Make sure that you have some examples that you can speak to them about your experience, and just try to be as confident as you can when you start the meeting, and be on time.
Mm-hmm. Great. Thank you, Colby, for that. We've hoped that you've had some key learnings today, and hope this workshop can steer you in a positive direction, and so you could feel more confident interviewing and be more prepared and understanding the overall do's and don'ts, and applying those best practices. So hope you have a lot to take away, as well as self-reflect. And thank you all for being a part of this workshop with us. Thank you, everyone.
We want to thank our team from Calvin Klein. If we could just give them our own applause. Love to see you clapping it up in the chat, thanking them for spending this time with us this morning. We have a great partnership with Calvin Klein. Again, we have recorded this session just for you so that you can revisit some of the learnings in the main room. But as everyone has said, the key to everything is practice. So thank you all for joining. It was a pleasure having you with us today. We look forward to seeing you in the Dress for Success community. That's community.dressforsuccess.org. If you haven't joined yet, check it out. This will be there, so you want to see it. And guys, have a great afternoon. If this was your lunch break, go back really powered. All right.
Thank you, Natalie.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, everyone.